we see for the time. So the title of the talk, so thanks of course Marcel, Jana for the invitation. I should say that I was very, very busy this week, so I really apologize. I couldn't really follow all the talks and discuss with you. But okay, I hope that at least the talk will be clear. And if there is some redundancy, so don't hesitate to tell me that if it was already said a lot. So the title of the talk is a bit specific because I want to present some experiments about this measurement of spectral function of ultraviolet atom in disordered potential. But as I also understood, I'm only people from the ultraviolet atom community speaking today, so I want to make this work more as a quest toward the spectroscopic study of the Anderson transmission. So I will spend time also to review a little bit what has been done with ultraviolet atoms before going into more specific detail of this mission. Okay? So this work, as said by Marcel, is done at Institut Optique. So I'm leading the experiment together with Alain Aspect that you have seen a lot. So more specifically, the people involved in this recent work was Vincent Denochot, Mukhtar Moussawada, and Valentin Rochkov, which is postdoc now gone in Germany, and there is new students, some are in the audience, and Baptiste, Adrien, and Vasiliki. I should also say that at one point you will see, so Dominique was there at some point, he told me. So Dominique Deland is a theory guy working on disorder system, dedicating also with matter waves. So he has made with his postdoc, Michael Pasek, the numerical studies in accordance with our measurements. Okay, so just in a very brief snapshot, what's somehow the big story with the ultraviolet atom in disorder. So to say, to be very rough, it starts around 10 years ago with the first demonstration of the 1D Anderson localization, directly observation of the localized matter waves in two teams, one in our team in Palazzo, and also in a team of Giovanni Modugno and Massimo Inguscio in Florence. So this work has really triggered somehow some of the field, the quest to look at disorder system with ultra-cold atom with somehow two lines of research. In one line, the idea is to stick to these studies of Anderson localization, and then the challenge somehow is to go to 3D and try to see what we can say about this 3D Anderson transition that appears, as you know, if you go from weak disorder to very strong disorder on the so-called Yoffie-Regal criterion. It means that you already put your system into very strong disorder system, then you expect a transition to a localized phase that we will translate during this talk always in this kind of diagram. So where this is the energy, this is somehow one fixed profile of the disorder. So high energy states are diffusive. There is the mobility edge where you expect the transition, and below you have the localized state. So the idea is to try to look in detail to these things. So this is one part of the research. Another one is also to take advantage of all what you can do with disorder system, is try to see what's going on if you put interaction in the system. And then there was two also different subjects. So one is looking with really equilibrium at very low temperature, looking at the interplay between this localization and also delocalization due to interaction that can drive you to superfluids, or if you put really a system into also very strong disorder, you can have this Bose-Glass phase. Okay, so this was really a line of research to try to have this signature of the Bose-Glass phase. And recently, there is a new line of research which is many localization, which is more linked to ergodicity, thermalization property of the system, and this field is actually very active in the domain. So in the following talk, I will stick to that, and just to say it roughly, as I said, I will come back more in detail in the following. There has been already 3 experiments that have shown this possible, at least localization in 3D. So one in group of Brian DiMarco in Urbana-Champaign, it was 2011, roughly at the same time as we could do in Palazzo. And there is a more recent experiment also in the lens in group of Giovanni Modugno and Massimo Inguscio. So all these experiments have seen this 3D localization, but as you will see, it's quite difficult experiment, and there is somehow a bottleneck that I will explain. And so the result of that is that since, of course, everybody believed that this localization was observed, but to have a precise measure of the mobility edge, it's another story. And it appears that, in fact, there is strong deviation at the moment between numerics and experiments, and it's called for further investigation. That's what we are doing at the moment. Okay? So this is more the outline of the talk. So the first part will be somehow an introduction to be a rapid review of our approach, what we can do with ultra-cold atom, what are the systems that we are studying. Then I will spend more time to give you the status somehow and what is the so-called bottleneck for this Anderson transition, what makes the problem at the moment to really be able to look at this transition. And somehow this is the second part of the talk. Then I will discuss the new result that we have done, the new approach, and we hope that will be very efficient to try to be able to locate and study this transition in future. Okay? So just first slide, so since I'm the only one on the community. In fact, this starts to be quite old. This is my commercial slide about ultra-cold atom, just to say that it's very controlled and tunable system where you can do many things. You can control the geometry. You can have the imaging of the wave function just by fluorescence, and you can even have it in some system which is atoms by atoms. You can very nice things control the interaction with the so-called Feshbach resonance. You can just think as a knob to control the interaction. You can turn it to 0 and make it strongly interacting. And you can even, these atoms are neutral, you can even play artificial magnetic field to connect further with all the story with condensed matter physics. Okay? So there's been plenty of experiments. Most famous one, 2002, is the Mott insulator transition in lattice size. So you put the atom in lattice size to tune the interaction and look if the atom can move on. Another very important success was the study of the BEC-BCS crossover that is linked to superconductivity and superfluidity with fermions, and something more connected to what we will do today, also to look at transport properties of this system, either with a channel or even this is realization of artificial graph field. Okay, just to say that we can do plenty of things, and the idea is that we just control and we have plenty of observation tools. So if I now go more in the specific study of disorder, basically we have two kinds, there can be other ones, but disorder potential that are used. One is the bichromatic lattices. I won't discuss it too much, and I was just in the lecture of Jamarki at the beginning of the talk. It's just, you put a lattice, the main lattice that defines the site, and then you have just a small one, second one with incommensurate frequency, so that it will simply modulate somehow the potential and act as a pseudo disorder. So this was used, for instance, in the work of at the Lens for studying the Anderson localization more obediently model in 2008. Okay, what we are working with in the group, and this is somehow our preferred since it's a true disorder, it's laser spectral disorder potential. So let me just explain what is this. In fact, it's very easy to create it. You just have to shine, you take a laser beam like this one, you shine it on a wave plate. Then here the lens is just supposed to focus all the light on the atoms. And what you get is simply a random pattern of light with bright spot here of light. And we can show that, in fact, the distribution, it will be important at some point, of this intensity pattern, it's an exponential one, so with highest probability of 0. That's why you see many blue. Blue is 0 intensity in the field, and some dark spots that can have very large intensity. Okay? And also something in the following I will call VR, somehow the strength of the disorder. So you can either understand it at the average value, which is not very significant for a theoretical point of view. We can make it at 0. What is important is the RMS value, which is the standard deviation, the fluctuation of your disorder. In fact, it's exactly the same. Okay? So I will call in the following VR the strength of the disorder, that you can think of it as the amplitude of the fluctuation. Okay? So this is the intensity pattern of light. The way it translates to the atoms, it's quite easy. In fact, it's just depending on the wavelength here, how far is it from a transition, specific transition of your atoms. So you can have two kinds. In fact, you can show that the potential, if you are far enough from this transition, it's just purely conservative. So it's just exactly the same. But you have to divide it, also some other constant here, with the detuning. It means that you can do two things. Either you are what we call blue detuned, that is the frequency is higher than that. That means that the higher spots here, I mean this is positive, will appear as barrier, okay? Or you can also tune it to the negative side, and then you just flip somehow it don't be used. So what's where here the barriers, they just become the waves. Okay? And since these two potentials are, this probability distribution is not symmetrical, these two potentials are not exactly the same. Okay? So I will call it either blue detune or repulsive laser speckle, or I can call it red detune or either attractive laser speckle disorder. Okay? So since I will use it quite a lot, just make it more clear about the statistical properties. So the very good point is that it's in fact very robust. It's just governed by diffraction of optics, and all the properties are extremely well known, well studied, and very well controlled. That's for sure. So what the exponential intensity distribution I already told you. Another important aspect that will be also important in the following, it is the fact that it's a correlated disorder. In fact, because we create it by light, we cannot do better than somehow the diffraction limit. So we have the numerical aperture. You're trying to focus the light. You can never do better than this size. In fact, it appears that the typical size that you see here is nothing else than the diffraction limit. That means the smallest size that you will get if you remove the WAF plate. Okay, it's only that, and making the WAF plate will somehow split the airy spot into many random spots, but with roughly the same size. Okay? So this is somehow of importance, and it sets an energy scale in the problem. So the way of naively see that is that basically we will make atoms, ultra-cold atoms, propagating that. So I'm quite sure you believe me that if you want to see some interesting quantum effect in this, a natural condition is that you want the double wavelengths of your atoms to be at least on the order of that, to have tunneling effect, to see some quantum propagation on that. Otherwise, you will basically have classical propagation of your atom. Okay? So what you want is that the double wavelengths to be at least on this scale. So if we translate this in energy scale, it's just that the kinetic energy or temperature, it means kV, kBT to have energy, should be much smaller, at least smaller, to a typical energy that will come often in the following, which is the correlation energy, which is only h bar square over 2m sigma square. Okay, this energy. And since this is done by light, we cannot make it very, very small. Okay? So if I make typical order of magnitude, somehow in the experiment, this typical size could be alpha microns. Really depend how you define it, but clearly it's the micrometer scale. It means that this energy scale that I introduced translates to something around 10 nanokelvin. Okay? So it means that if we want to see some quantum propagation of atoms in this kind of disorder potential, we have to go to extremely low temperature. So in fact, I sometimes call it not ultra-cold atom, but ultra-cold atom. So now this is even one order of magnitude lower in temperature than it's what is usual in the community. And we have done even experiment with on the picokelvin, 100 picokelvin temperature. So we have really to work a lot for this experiment to be very, very, very low in temperature. Okay? So this is somehow our tool, the speckle disorder. So the natural scheme on the experiment, it's quite easy to understand. Well, on the one of in 2008, either in Florence or in the Palazzo, you start with a Bose-Einstein condensate. So I don't describe how I do that. I just make a cloud of ultra-cold atoms with very, very low temperature. And if I want to make it in 1D, so I can use this interaction with light. So I can do speckle, but I can make simply a cube of light with a laser beam. So if it's red detune, it will simply guide the atom on that. So at the beginning, here we add another potential to obtain the atoms there. So they are confined, but we can release the confinement, and then they are allowed to propagate there. So basically the same idea in Florence, but with another disorder, which is bichromatic. Okay? And then the natural scheme is just you wait with time, and the cloud expands, and then at a given time, you can shine light on the atoms and see where they are. And then you start back the experiment and try to monitor the expansion. Okay? And then you can look if is it ballistic, is it diffusive, or it is localized. And localized means it stops, and also it has the right expected feature. That means it's not simply simple classical trapping, because you can localize, particularly in a box. It's very easy. You put walls, and then it just doesn't move. Okay? So you have to look at all this kind of things. So this was the idea, and came back to looking, for example, in this experiment, we could see the expansion. This was how somehow the millimeter scale, and it could expand. So just, you're maybe not so familiar with ultra-cold atoms, usually we think of it on something on the micrometer scale. Here we could let it expand on the millimeter scale. So it was really a very large expansion of the matter waves. So somehow macroscopic, you could see it even by eye. And then it stopped, and the profile here were indeed exponential, as was expected by its prediction. So this is very important. In fact, not only, as I said, to observe just that the expansion is stopped, you have to compare somehow with theoretical prediction to be sure what we are doing. Okay? So this was a very nice experiment because, okay, from an historical point of view, it was the first time that there was very clear observation on of the wave function, matter wave, in 1D. So this was an historical aspect. But maybe the most important point is just show that with this ultra-cold atom system, we could have the level control to study this kind of system. So it really triggered the domain. So I will go in the following to the 3D stuff. But just it's natural when we see this kind of profile. I told you it's good to see something, but then usually we have to compare with theoretical prediction to be sure what we are doing. So it would be good if we could also have direct signature on at least relay this observation to something which is known, for example, as a mechanism to produce localization. Let's say, for example, this loop with localization. Can we also relate this expansion? Can we measure directly what is the scattering time, the mean free path? Just can we have something more than just we see that it expands and look at the wave profile, just to connect more and more to what we all know in this other system. So in fact, this is possible, but then we have to change the scheme. And just in a few slides, I will show you all the beautiful things that we could look at if we are not looking in expansion in wave space, but if now we monitor what's going on in momentum space. Okay? So first thing to show is, for example, how to observe this very clear and well-known signature of weak localization, which is covariant backscattering. So it's very similar to the loop. Just that the geometry is a bit different. Instead of starting from a point and making a loop, you start with a plane wave. And if you have semi-infinite medium, then the light enters in one direction, come back. And I believe you all know that in this situation, if you can find a reciprocal path, it will interfere constructively and add to a strong enhancement in the probability of back reflection. And this has been seen a lot in many different systems. For example, in optics, so the enhancement by a factor 2, which is exactly the same thing in the lecture of Giamarchi, where I told you that you have an enhancement of 2 of going in your origin. It's exactly the same thing. But here, it's localized in a well direction of space, which is exactly in momentum. So if you look in the right direction, you see directly the signature of weak localization, and you can really study it. Okay, you can isolate it somehow in momentum space. So this was seen in optics. Just to say that it's everywhere, so it was even observed in Cassini-Huygens mission, and this is the Saturn rings. So there is the ice there, that's diffusive medium, and then if the light is back, the satellite could also observe this. I'm not sure that you see clearly, but this was identified also colored by scattering. And just also from advertisement, it's so easier somehow to see it. It's very clear everywhere. So we made a transportable experiment at Palais de la Découverte here in Paris, just to show that for everyone. Okay, so it's everywhere. So how to see that with ultra-cold atom? The idea came by Nicolas Cheroret, and there was also Dominique Deland, Kornmüller, and Christian Miniatura. So all these guys that make wonderful things. And they come with the idea is then if we want to reproduce this, it's simple, so then we start with the same thing, but instead of just letting the cloud expand, we will give it a velocity. Okay, so we make a kick. We can do that, for example, by just making a force, by magnetic gradient, and then we accelerate, and we make some velocity k0 here going forward. Okay, and all what we will do in the following is not looking directly on where is the atom at the moment where to do that, but we wait a certain time, which we call the time of flight, so that we can correlate at the beginning. Everything happens here, so this is much larger time scale, and then we wait, so the atoms are here, and we wait a certain time, we switch off everything, and we look where they go. Okay? So it's clear that after a certain time, you can clearly correlate the position where the velocity. For example, so it was going up, then at one point the cloud is here. So if it was going down, the cloud will be here. And it's clear, so you can really image another important tool, the momentum distribution directly with that. So this is what's going on if I kick the atom, okay, and I put no disorder, so I have the well-defined momentum distribution on Cadet. I can do the same, but once I give the velocity, now I just switch on the disorder, so everything's happening in real space or in there, and then I switch off everything and come back with momentum distribution. And what we see is something quite very clear. So here you have the initial momentum distribution, it starts to be depleted, and you have all atoms that lie on the ring, which is nothing else than the elastic scattering ring. Okay? Because when you start to be scattered, if the disorder is weak enough, then you just change the direction, but basically that's it. Okay? And if we want to see at the coherent backscattering, somehow the idea is to look what's going on if you go back. Okay? And it starts clear to be here that something happening here, and if we go a longer time, you see that clearly if you go at the minus direction, it's really the enhancement, which is nothing else than the coherent backscattering peak. Okay? So I made it exactly the same way, but in this fancy picture in 3D. So this is the initial peak. Then you see the ring, the elastic scattering ring appearing, and just in backward direction, the CBS peak, which is very clear signature of weak localization, and you see it's somehow localized in this momentum space. So we can really, by monitoring the height of these things, have an idea of the coherence of the system. And for instance, I won't enter to the detail, but we could play with something which is very similar to the Charvin and Charvin experiment in the 80s to try to be sure that this is phase coherent. So the idea is to find a way to modulate the phase difference between these two paths, and we made a kick, we made a dephasing in this system, and we could monitor somehow that this can disappear and reappear whenever we want, and that was a very clear signature that this is indeed related to the interference of these paths. Another thing that we can do, so many signatures on this, if we, for example, just follow the initial peak. Okay, the initial peak, it just tells you at which time scale you scatter your atoms. Okay, what is the probability to be scattered? Every atoms are here at the beginning. If we monitor this, somehow this is nothing else, the decay of this initial peak at the scattering time, elastic scattering time. Okay, and there is a paper on arXiv, so if you're interested, where we have studied this scattering time, so it means that we can measure this TOS directly with this system in a very large range of parameters, and we could, for example, investigate what means really the Seehofer-Regel criterion for the strong disorder by comparing all what we observe between with perturbative theory, which is typically Born approximation on TOS. So here you can look if you're interested. And last but not least, maybe, so this is good to have signature of weak localization, but it will be even better to have direct signature of strong localization, Anderson. So maybe you know that it's different to have weak localization and Anderson localization. You can even make situation funny where you can kill completely weak localization and still have Anderson localization. Okay? So clearly this means that it's good, you are in a good direction, but doesn't at all means that it's a signature of Anderson localization. So there was another work, still with the same guys here, so the authors are a bit different, but around the same time in 2012, they found that from numerical simulation that if you go now to the very strong disorder regime where you expect this Anderson localization, there is another feature where they call coherent forward scattering peak here, which appears to be a very direct signature of Anderson localization. And it's really to try to observe this with our system is really challenging. In fact, we didn't succeed at the time. It's really demanding, but that will be a high challenge. And there is, in fact, a signature that has been demonstrated in similar system, but which is not exactly the same, which is Kilk-Water system. And I don't have the time to discuss that today. So this somehow was a digression, but just to tell you that we have plenty of tools to study this disorder system, and in fact it seems that the road is very clear to go to this 3D Anderson transition and look what people are trying to do in many other systems in a very easy way. So it will appear that in fact, as for any experimental system, tackling this Anderson transition is in fact extremely hard. Okay? So we are faced somehow to some difficulties in the thing. And so I said in the beginning, so the remaining of talk will be the spectral function. So in this part, I will also try to spend time to explain you why these spectral functions come into play and why they are important in this game. So as I said, there has been already 3 observations. So here I put figures of this 3D Anderson localization in Urbana-Champaign, in our team. So they were roughly at the same times, and the recent one in Florence. And in all, the goal was to study this mobility edge, try to pinpoint it, and even the great goal will be to look at critical regime, critical exponent, and so on. So this experiment, and some have produced estimation of the mobility edge, trying to do that. But as you will see, as I said, in fact, it appears that this measurement are not very precise. And to understand what is the problem, let me just explain and describe what was the observation. So I take my example of our experiment that is basically the same for all the kind of experiments. Okay? So the idea is the same as before. You take your cloud. So here we come back in weight space. Okay? We put the 3D disorder on it. We change the amplitude, and we try to see if we can move from something which is diffusive to something which is localized by increasing the strength of the disorder. So we could really see the diffusive behavior. This is very. When we now try to go to the strong disorder regime and look at Anderson localization, what we observe is something like that. So I should say that in fact these kind of figures are much less inclusive than CBS and so on. The reason why is that if you look at this profile, so they are not so impressive just looking at it, but if you are experimentalist, just let me note it, you see that the time scale here we are going up to 6 seconds. 6 seconds with our system, with the Focal atom, it's extremely low temperature. It's really a huge achievement. Okay? And it's the reason we try to look at this very large time scale is that if you want to see localization in weight space, it's hard to say when you see something that's moving. Does it move just at this time scale? Maybe with so it's really depends on the time scale that you achieve. That you can play, well, it doesn't move up to certain velocity somehow. Okay? So we have to wait for that. So what we could see is that clearly there is some dynamics. So if you go to 6 seconds, you see that on the wings, the central peak has diminished, and means that there is a diffusive phase in that. So this is somehow disappointing, but there is a good news in the same time that if you look at the center, after a while, we could identify at the center of the cloud, somehow the diffusive part goes slowly away on the width, and with it, at the center, here, the localized part, that somehow this is the blue part. And once again, here we compare our data with theoretical model, and the argument was very nice once again, so that we could really be confident that here there is the localized. So this is somehow a good result because it was the first observation that we clearly can see this observation, this localization in 3D. But it's a bit disappointing to see this transition, okay? Because at the same time we have both localized and diffuse. And the reason for that, it's quite simple somehow. It's come back with, in fact, it's really linked to this story of 3D Anderson localization. I didn't comment it too much at the beginning. But if you want to observe this in 3D, you have to push it in extremely strong disorder. This Joffe-Regel criterion tell you that KL should be under of 1, meaning that somehow your wave barely oscillates once before it is scattered again. So it is really, really a non-perturbative disorder on your system. So what it means is that in our system, as I told you, we try to produce an extremely low called atomic samples. So it's very low energy, it's beautiful. But then we want to localize it. And then we have to increase to put the bits in disorder, and the disorder has to be extremely strong. Okay, so when you do that, the point is that we had something which was somehow Dirac energy distribution in this diagram. But when you switch on the disorder, what's come as a result is that we also spread the energy distribution. And in fact, in our system, I don't know why we choose that, but we decided even to go with fast friction. So it's even more clear why you have the spread, because we have in your initial state, which is a typical K state, eigenstate of the disorder. There are 3 propagating states, and then you switch on the disorder. So clearly, these K states are not anymore the eigenstate of the system. Okay, so you have to project it on the new eigenstate of the system, and you can even more understand it. But the point is that even there was other scheme where you try to do slowly, whatever you do, the disorder is so strong, so at the end they all have the same kind of friction. So it's really all the experiments are insensitive. So this is a bit bothering if you want to try to see in detail this mobility edge. So I explain we can say something, but if you want to look at the critical regime, you have to forget it at the moment. So the way, as I said, you can still have some estimation of the mobility edge. The way is, if you know that, and in your experiment you try to estimate what is the localized fraction, so you have many tools on command, but if you have this, the energy distribution on the localized fraction, so it's quite simple, you just have to move the mobility edge to be sure that this part corresponds to the localized fraction. So it is the way the mobility edge is estimated in all experiments. So you see that the crucial point to have this from experiments, you can try, this is experimental realization, you can try to see what is the localized fraction, so this area. But we have a trouble to measure this energy distribution because we cannot measure it directly. And here comes the importance of the spectral function. So to make it even more clear, just what is we call the spectral function? It's just somehow a drawn probability function that tell you if I have a k vector, a wave with a k momentum, what is the probability to have the energy? Okay? So this is somehow you have the dispersion here on the wave, and for example, this function, the maxima is just the dispersion relation. Okay? If you have k, the maximum energy, the typical energy you have, change with k, so this is nothing else than the dispersion relation. So if you have a pure system, that's perfect. This is simply, this is very well defined, sorry, and you end up with this dispersion. But if you have in your system some disorder or interaction and something that messes something, then in fact these k excitation are not eigenstate of the system, so they have a spread in energy. And this spread, somehow you can interpret it as quasi-particle lifetime. So your particle is not an eigenstate of the system, so it will not live forever, but it has a finite time scale. Okay? And you can relate so the width of this energy around the dispersion relation as just h bar over tau, and tau is the lifetime of the particle. I will make it more clear later that this tau, in fact, if we now come back with the story of matter wave going on in disorder, is nothing else than the scattering time, so the typical time scale. Okay? I will come back in the later. So this spectral function somehow is important for theoreticians. When they start to describe the system, they have to calculate this somehow to estimate this scattering time. Okay? But for experimental point of view, as I told you, what I want, if I want to estimate the mobility edge, I want to be able to measure this distribution in energy.
So it looks like you only have you described two parameters of that shape.
Yeah, for very weak disorder. But as you will see, it can be a more sophisticated distribution. So this is somehow a nice view in a weak disorder. This is valid only in weak disorder. I will come back more later on this. Okay, just naive view of what is the spectral function. So here is the key for experimental. So it's very basic. So as I said, what I want is to measure these energy distributions to try to locate the mobility edge. But what I can measure, and I'll show you that I could do that with, for example, the CBS, I can measure the momentum distribution. So this spectral function allows me to make the link. If I measure, now this I can measure, I told you I make this time of flight experiment, I measure this distribution. Then if I know this very well, I can estimate this distribution, and with the localized fraction, I estimate the mobility edge. So this was somehow the typical way to estimate the mobility edge. And you see that, in fact, you have to be precise on this because it's highly sensitive and at least precise and reliable estimation on the spectral function. It's really a key point if you stick with these methods to estimate clearly the mobility edge. And to show you that it's not just a matter of being just ultra precise, there is big error.
So your spectral function doesn't change with time?
No, it doesn't.
So this is very special. This is very special to atoms. Because in solids.
Ah, because we don't have excitation and so on. Yeah, so it's purely conservative, it's something. But I mean, for me, in condensed matter, you can, okay, you mean in a real system. Yes. So if you have excitation, temperature, of course, here it's just something fixed that we have to determine. What I just want to say is that if you know it well, that's good, because you can expect to have a clear determination of this, and then you try to relate your mobility. So just to make it clear, let me show you what is the typical agreement between numerics and experiment at the time. They are more clear. So it appears, in fact, more, so it was 5 years or 6 years after the first realization that Dominique Deland and co-workers have produced exact, somehow, this numerics of where should be the mobility edge on our system. So here, it just...
What does it mean exactly?
Exact means just numerics. And yeah, it was numerics, but I do, yeah, maybe numerics. But at least it's precise. That means that I believe you can trust it. Exact means I trust it. And so this, okay, just the scale here, the 0 here, it's just the average of the disorder. So somehow the sea level, so here that's bottom of the ocean, and here that's here. So it just here compared to the average value of the disorder. So when we are negative, that means the mobility should be here. And it is normalized to V0, okay? And in this scale, it is also the amplitude of the disorder. So sorry, I missed between VR and V0, V0, so it's the same as before. And it is divided with this correlation energy that I introduced before. So I don't want to comment more, but you can produce this kind of feature. So where are the experiments? In fact, there are 2 experiments. So this is ours from 2012. You see that it is not so bad. In fact, it appears to be in a domain where it will appear more clearly in the following. It's called the quantum disorder regime. In fact, it's not so easy to make even numerics in this regime, but it appears that it's not stupid at all, but it's very indirect. In fact, we have to do a lot of machinery between our data to try to find it. So it's good, but we are far from any direct measurement. This more recent measurement in Florence, in fact, is more involved somehow. We are trying to build upon what we have done. I don't want to enter into detail, but they try to have something much more direct and measure this spectral function. They do not measure it, sorry. They calculate a lot of spectral function from numerics and try to estimate the energy distribution from this measurement of momentum. And it appears that it's not so bad, but clearly there is still some deviation from it. And the main reason for my point of view is that this numerical estimate of spectral function, they have been done a bit quickly. You will see that they can have a very special feature, and that's from the question. They are not only defined somehow that they have average value and this way. Okay?
I'm confused, I'm sorry. So which graph was in black? You have the numerics for your models by Dominique Deland?
Yeah. So
in orange is what you are getting in experiments, and what's in red?
So this is the experiment of Florence in 2015. So
but it's numerical or it's real experiment?
No, it's real experiment. This is experiment, real experiment. So as I said, in fact, if you look at this, it's not so good.
Right, so what's the point of looking on it at the same graph? Should we be comparing anything?
The idea is that...
red one.
It seems like it totally disagrees with your experiments.
Yeah, so...
yes.
So, okay, let me just...
But it's a blue and red, no?
No. This is, we are doing 3D. We are doing 3D. So let's forget 2008 was just for fun, somehow to call it that, but we are far from that now. We try to really to look at this mobility edge, and I didn't want to come into detail or too much on this experiment, and I agree that if you look at this slide, it seems that there is strong disagreement. Okay, but from an experimental point of view, you can also see that a great achievement because it's highly difficult to have. But it's tell you, so just to tell, okay, it's not this, we are quite happy on that, but as I said, it's very indirect. So maybe we are lucky, there is so many parameter modeling to go here, so that maybe, I mean, a real successful experiment to have a direct measurement. Then what they try to do, so they rely on less of modeling, but it's not so easy. Just to tell you that it's not an easy thing, here there is 2 experiments only, but I didn't put the experiment from Demarco, okay, the first one. So in fact, it's just here, but it's not at the Y scale. It's just there. So in fact, it's the same graph. Okay. So here, that's an experiment. So here, depending on how you look, if you look at in this, okay, the agreement is not exactly the same, but it can be much more. So what I'm showing this, okay, there is a lot of debate about the experiment, but the key point, and it's really related to the spectral function, why they made this estimation so wrong is that they made a big mistake on the spectral function, or big approximation. You can see mistake of approximation. That is, they used the spectral function for free particles. So they didn't even consider the spreading or whatever. Okay? So if you do that, you can have your measure distribution or whatever, momentum distribution, but then you make a very bad estimate of your energy distribution. So,
but maybe I missed something, but isn't it possible with the raw data to really analyze the data?
It could be. In fact, there is many other problems with this experiment, so I believe it's
There's one possibility, the possibility you're suggesting as opposed to...
Yeah, in fact, here on this...
It's the interpretation that is...
Yes.
The data may be
Yeah,
correct.
here I don't want to enter too much into detail, then I'm just taking in this that interpretation is wrong. But I also believe that the experiment has a lot of problems. So, but I don't want to enter into
There is one issue that, I mean, most of the theory didn't work out, but it's relevant for experiments in hazard.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, because you have a very anisotropic experiment. If not, I mean, you have a spectrum.
And also the time scale. So if I want to just, okay, here I put the number. For example, I told you that here we were looking expansion on 6 seconds. Just to tell you in brief what is the problem. Okay, 6 seconds, that means we have to wait a very long time to see if there's move or not. The experiment in length, so it's not easy. So you have really to have a nice experiment to do that. We work a lot for that. For example, in Florence, they spend 500 half a second, which is not bad, but that also could cope in the fact that it's hard to really estimate the mobility. Okay? The key point, another big problem of this experiment is that they perform experiment in 15 milliseconds. So in 15 milliseconds, it's basically the scattering time. So there is, I don't want to come too much into that. There is a lot of, it's not so clear what they did in this experiment.
Moreover, you have doubts about the fact that it was really
You can be 3D, it's anisotropic 3D, so...
I suggest we are not constrained with the plan.
No, but okay, it's good to discuss because somehow for...
We'll leave the questions for after, and we'll let just make your finish the 15 minutes.
Ceux qui veulent au bas,
Okay, thank you.
I'm not where they should be.
Oh, no. But there is two things. Experiment, then you perform your experiment and you try to do it as best as possible, so that's what you do. And then you can interpret your data. It's another story. Okay? So here it's mixed. But okay, it's good for that because it's not so often that we can really discuss what are the results on this experiment. Really come back because there was many experiments done, and it's clear what is done now. And thanks to all the numerics by Dominique, which is clear. Okay, so if we, so somehow that's the conclusion of this whole introduction, and we'll see where we go after that. But if we want to go better, a key feature for once again for the 3D is to have a much better control of this energy distribution. And you can see it in two ways. So the first thing is it will be good to be able to measure it directly. So that's about the knowledge of the spectral function. So can we recover in the precise way this? So this is connected to one part. But it will be even better if we can control it. That means make it narrower and somehow instead of having these broad things, having narrow things that we can control and tune, of course, to go around the mobility edge and study the critical region. So all the stories about this energy distribution. So here comes what we have done, and it's ready to solve this problem that we have changed the scheme. And I will present to you now the new method, which is the spectroscopic scheme, that aims somehow to populate in a well-defined energy level in this system. And you will see that, in fact, as a second result, or side result, it also gives me directly this spectral function. So the idea is what we want to have, just rephrase it, is that instead of having this broad energy, we just want to put, we have your BC, okay, with very narrow energy, it's very fine and so on. And here we have this very strong disorder where we want to see this Anderson localization. So the idea is we just want to transfer somehow the atom at one specific energy level. And if we can, scan it there. So the idea for that, it's quite simple. What we can do is we can just use the spin of the atoms. We can make, in fact, two states. It's a bit more, the real situation is more complicated, but let's say that you have the spin up and spin down. Okay? And you can arrange a situation where, for example, the spin down, they don't see the disorder. So you can produce your BEC, very nice, and in the second state, here at the beginning there is no atoms there, but you put the disorder. Okay? So the disorder, when the atoms are in this state, they feel the disorder, but if they are in this state, they feel nothing. So what we do between them, we can cooperate just by like RMN, okay? NMR, sorry. We can just make a spin flip and go from this part to this part just by spin flip. Okay? And the good things, if you do that, in fact, you can do two things at once. The first is that by just choosing the energy or the frequency of your RF frequency, you can select the final energy. So the final energy is just as simple as that. It's the initial energy plus the energy of the photons, RF photons that you have transferred to the atom. So this you can choose it simply by tuning the frequency. And the second thing, you can also tune here the energy spread. It's simply, if you do things well, the inverse of the time by which you perform the coupling. Okay, if you are Fourier limited. So you can do, if you can success to do the experiment is well controlled for a very long time, you can decrease the energy. So here I just put the number of 10 Hertz. It won't speak to you, but just to let you know that it basically is between 1 and 2 orders of magnitude better than what I've shown you before. Okay? And this we achieve to do that. So this is the idea, and then we try to, let's say, if it's propagate, localize. Here, what it gives you also as a second, at least for free, is that if now you perform the scheme, but you look how many atoms you can transfer. Okay? So here the system is basic system of quantum physics where you populate, you have one state, and you have a continuum of states, and you try to populate. And in fact, it's very well known that the transfer is given by a Fermi-Golden rule. So apart to this, which is simply somehow the RF power, how strong we drive the frequency, this is quite natural. Here, you just look at the overlap between your initial state, so the probability of transfer, the number of atoms that you can transfer over time, it's directly proportional to the overlap between your initial state and the final state that you are targeting. Okay? And if here I made just the assumption the BC is something very large, with no excitation and so on, so we will just assume it's basically cannot, k equals 0. Okay? It's just null momentum. So here, this is my BC wave function. I assume it to be k equals 0. Here, this is my eigenstate of energy, the final energy, and I have to sum all, to do the density of state, that means I sum all the states that are accessible there. So here you see that in fact you can recognize nothing else than the probability for the momentum to be k equals 0, the initial momentum, to have the energy E. Okay, it's nothing else than that. So here it's clear that it's nothing else, so it's some calculation, but this transfer is nothing else than the spectral function, a particular spectral function at k naught, equals 0, so an initial momentum is going to have DC at no momentum, and with the energy F, which is simply chosen with my frequency of detuning. Okay? Then I can measure it simply, so the experiment that I will show you in the following is simply I start with my DC and transfer with my atoms, and then I count the atoms that I have transferred, and I change the detuning. And doing so, I will measure one spectral function, a particular one which is at k. Okay? Just for people which are used to spectral function, it's at least for people from the condensed matter community, it's something which is very, in fact, common to measure the spectral function. For example, in RPES, in the condensed matter system, where the general scheme is you have the system that you want to investigate, for example, a piece of metals where you have the electrons, and you shine light on it. Then you extract an atom, okay, an electrons here, and this is a free electrons where you can measure energy and momentum. And from that, if you know that, then you try, so the scheme is you have your electrons, you extract one electron, you measure K and E, and from that, you try to find out what are the excitation of the system. So this is really the principle of RPS in condensed matter, but it has also been implemented with ultra-cold atoms for Fermi. I don't want to enter into details, but the idea is you have your state, you couple with the free state, and if you can really control this free state, you can get information on that. So what we have done somehow is just to inverse the scheme compared to the very classical scheme. We start with the free state, we populate all the free state, and then we will transfer atom in the state which is the state under investigation. It's somehow a reverse scheme compared to the usual RPS scheme. Okay? So just what you have to know is that with this, we can control the spectral function. Okay? Last, before going to more detailed experiment, and we'll see how much time I get. So if not, I can skip it.
4 minutes.
4 minutes? Then it's good anyway. Okay, so with this spectral function, just to make clearly the link, as I said, you can really look at this energy spread as the inverse lifetime of the Castle particle. So if I want now to translate it to make us clear what's going on if you have, for ultra-cold atoms, for atoms in disorder, for instance, let's suppose that you start with a free particle, okay, which is a free state and propagates, so without the disorder. So at the beginning, the spectral function is just a Dirac function, which is the energy is exactly defined by h bar k squared over 2a. Okay? Then I switch on the disorder. Okay? Then my atoms start to scatter into the system, and clearly the eigen k is not anymore the eigen state of the system, and I have to project somehow, and this is coupled to many other states due to the disorder. And once again, this is a coupling to a continuum. So you can really understand this tOS as the lifetime of your initial particle when it starts to propagate in the system, and you expect nothing else in this very simple picture that the energy is around h bar over 2. Okay? So if I have only 5 minutes left, I will skip this, which was interesting, but okay, I won't go into the detail. It's more technical, and I think it's better to have discussed exactly where we are in the field at the moment. And just want to go in the conclusion. So we have done all these measurements just to point that, for example, I go there. So maybe the main result is there. Is that if you look in the spectral function, for example, in this blue recursive disorder where all the experiments were done with ultra-cold atoms, they are very peculiar behavior. For instance, this feature is far from being just somehow a Lorentzian with a certain width. So it has peaks and so on. So this has very well controlled and so on. And we have performed, so this is the experiment, and in red, that's the numerics done with the team of Dominique Delon. So very well agreement on that. So if I go to the conclusion, so somehow here I skipped off what we have learned in spectral function. So the idea we are almost there to try, at least we believe that in a few, when the experiment has some trouble at the moment, but as soon as it starts back, we are in good shape somehow to try to measure this mobility edge in a precise way, and maybe to look at the critical regimes. And for instance, very nice things would be to have, if we are very narrow in energy, to see multifractality of wave function and so on. So I skipped also detail that is needed, but something where it's really connected to the story of the Haydn landscape and so on. And that's why I communicated with Marcel a long time ago, when I saw the paper with Svetana. This is this kind of idea that what we could do with ultra-cold atom. The idea is that with this paper we can really control it. We can control, for instance, the correlation. And there is a thing which is expected is that if I make something very narrow, spectral line, let's say that I always have my same wavelengths. So if it's very narrow, it's the quantum disorder regime, everything is quantum, and my mobility edge is, let's say it's far above. I have plenty of steps which are localized. But it is also known that if now you expect for the same energy, somehow you make now the grain which are much smooth, okay? So this can be tuned in experiment very easy way. You just tune the numerical aperture, exactly as you with your camera. So you can make very broad. Then what you expect is that the motion of the particle in this will be much more classical. And then it is expected that, in fact, the mobility edge should really come down and will approach what we call the classical percolation threshold. Classical percolation threshold is just the typical energy Okay, you have classical particle and you just look at which energy they can escape. So it is known somehow that it should approach to that. And the physics there of Anderson localization should match somehow to the physics of percolation, except to very narrow energy range there. And this, for me, seems very suitable somehow to try to connect this, at least if we can succeed to do that, with all the work of Smetana and Marcel, because somehow it appears that localization in this system as a percolation process in somehow the ideal non-set, that will be the idea to try to see that in split. So I stop there. I'm sorry for this part on spectral function, but I believe it was not the most important.
Thank you very much. So we have a few minutes for questions.
Quick question about the crossover from Anderson to classical regime. Do you expect the feeling of the phase transition, that is the, just the drop of the mobility edge, or do you know already maybe it's smooth?
I expect something smooth, so there is theoretician there also. I try to be very cautious on all this. What I understand is that it should be very smooth crossover, but somehow if you look in the, so I have to go very far away. I come back with all, so because it's important there. Okay. Somehow, what the crossover here we are, it's a ratio between the sigma. What drives the classic quantum versus classical regime is the ratio between VR, 0, and sigma. So here it starts to 2, but let's say we go to 20, 100, and so on. So it should be smooth like that, and somehow in this regime we expect to be here something where it should go somehow to something which can be connected to classical calculation.
And this is a 3D conversation, or you are looking at one the effect of mobility?
Yeah. No, it's 3D. So what I also want to say is that for speckle, it's maybe a bit peculiar. So what I'm saying is more for Gaussian disorder, because for the blue disorder, there is weird things going there, but I'm not going too much on it. It's just general issue. You can see that in when they choose speckle or Gaussian disorder or whatever. So we can try to check.
I have a question about your orange slide.
Yes.
So at some point the mobility edge should disappear for weak disorder, because there is no localization disorder.
Yeah, it's really. Why do you say that? It's just that you decrease this. The typical energy range where it's not VR, somehow it's VR square over here or something like that, or even the Larkin energy, if you're thinking of that. But it's not 0, and with our ultra-quantum we can resolve this. So clearly it appears there. We can discuss that, but there is localization.
Even for very weak disorder?
Yeah, but then of course the energy, so everything is very small, and somehow it appears to be located in very small region on the
It's a real 0, it's not.
So let's say the real 0, if you talk here, is just the American. So if you decrease it, everything is happening around 0, and it can be very tiny there, but we can resolve that. And we made experiments somehow in this regime where the energy scale is not VR, but it's the real scale VR square over here. And that's why it's not easy, and we spend, that's just for comment, but we spend, in fact, a lot of time on experiment to be in this regime, not to be in the more classical regime, which is also interesting. But we were somehow having double wavelengths that's 10 times more than the typical size of the.
It's mathematical repetition, Sergey.
Okay, we can discuss it.
I have a question on your method to measure spectral function. You know, you have a radio frequency that split, so you promote an electron to high energy.
Yes.
But you also have probably, I don't have the orders of magnitude in my head, but K is no longer 0. You have a recoil also.
Okay, the recoil of K is completely English, but what we could do is do it with Raman and then with light. It's nothing, but we can do the same with light. Then you can do with Raman transition, and then we can transfer something which is.
So the K is 0 compared to all the
we can completely forget it there. But we could do that, and we could also do the same with accelerating the DC at the beginning. Then the K is not 0 at the beginning, and then we will measure the spectral function. So we could do that. But okay, it's another story, but we can tell that maybe the most interesting one are the one that cannot equal 0. Then they will simply more Lorentzian. become more and more simple.
Very nice question. So what is it, a straight line?
It's just because it's indirect estimation. So we can discuss, that's really the signature, but somehow there is a lot of modeling there. I trust it, but there is so the straight line is just because there was a model in Bear Square with scale as straight line.
Okay, last question.
I haven't really understood what you expect to learn with the localization landscape. Could you comment a bit on this?
What I expect to learn?
Can you measure it, or?
What I expect, for me at least, is to be able to measure this transition for a very large range, coming from this situation. So yeah, I go there. What I would like to see, so it's somehow the same things I'm doing is this diagram, starting from this energy range where VR is much lower than VR, and going in this. So if I can do that, then what I see, no one has looked in detail how localization behaves, this Anderson localization, in situation which appears to be extremely different. And I discussed once with Dominique, and he told me that if you look now at the critical regime, then the wave function can explain very large, and it could be that, and it is expected, that maybe the critical regime is similar. For me, it's an open question. What could be the critical exponent, what they will do? In principle, they should be the same, but the physics is so different. So that's what we have to do. So there is other things that we like to do. But here it seems that in this regime, somehow to say, it is clear that somehow there is connection with classical calculation. The idea to connect with the work of Marcel and Svetlana is, can we really rephrase it exactly the same way in the ideal landscape, somehow, which is somehow renormalized potential by quantum. And I know that there is also a lot of theoretical work of studying this is, for me, connected maybe back to calculated with current potential approximation. The idea to make efficient
comment at the coffee break.
Okay. So maybe you won't comment at all.